Welcome to our YouTube channel. I am Dr. Ashwati. Students, in this lecture, I am going to discuss about one of the comparative political analysis approaches. There are so many different types of approaches are there. Institutionalist approach is there, then after you have the systems approach, political culture approach, neo-institutionalism, so many different types of approaches are there. But in this lecture, I'll be discussing about the political culture approach. So let's understand, it emerged in the 1960s, or we can say that it emerged after the end of the Second World War. And as you know that during the intervening years of the First World War and the Second World War, there was a rise of behavioralism as well, which was observed in the field of political science. So it is related to, or we can say that this approach is related to the nations or national cultures. Like earlier, the approach was to look at the functioning of the institutions. Second case came the looking at the electoral behavior per se. But here under political culture, it looked at the aspects of how the political culture in itself is shaped, like what are the symbols, the set of beliefs and various other aspects, the values that define the situations in which political action actually takes place, or like, you know, how the outcomes is reached and how they are actually shaped by the events or various other things. So we have to understand the beliefs, customs and all these things, or we can say the practices as well. So political culture, it emerged in the 1960s. So Gabriel Almond and Sidney Verba's work on civic cultures in 1963, which was published that time, it came up with that idea of identifying that what is the relevance of political culture in understanding the political phenomenon. Surveyed the attitudes of citizens towards their nations in some of the countries. Basically, their focus was on developed countries like USA, Great Britain, Germany, France, Italy and Mexico. So these countries were analyzed by Verba as well as Gabriel Almond. So types of political culture that they developed were parochial, subject and participant. So parochial culture is the one of the most traditional, we can say that here people participate or they have a very limited knowledge about the political decision making, or they don't take much interest in them. Okay, so mostly they are like, you know, moved more by the ethnic and the primordial sentiments. And second is the subject culture. This is a mixed way. Okay, so here citizens are informed about the government programs, tax and other laws, but they do not play a very active role, or they don't try to, they know things but they don't try to influence. In the participant culture, where it is not the people are highly informed, and there is a high grades of political activism is also observable, like where the people, like the government in itself is highly accountable towards the people, because the government in itself, government and its institutions as well as the executive, all the authorities are aware about the fact that people are well aware, they are knowledgeable, they know what things are happening. If any decisions are taken against the wishes of the people, or let's say that there can be a kind of an anti-incumbency also in the next coming up elections, or all these things are there. So where the people are politically informed, that participant culture represents where the people are more politically informed. Moving ahead. Then after Almond and Verba, they identified 5 important dimensions of political culture. So here we have a sense of national identity. For the countries, they're well aware about the national identity. They have an attitude towards oneself as a participant in political life. They are well aware about the fact that yes, the casting of vote is going to put a kind of an impact. They are well aware about it. Attitudes towards one's fellow citizen. When I am casting vote or when I am participating in anything, I know that I am not just doing it only for myself, but I have a greater thing in perspective in my mind, that my actions are going to affect not only me, but it is going to affect the others as well, the other fellow citizens. Attitudes and expectations regarding governmental output and performance. So there are people, they have a kind of an attitude and perspective that what sort of political decisions are going to take place, or like how it is, and they know how to react as well. attitudes towards knowledge about the political process of decision making, that they know that how the decisions are made, like in USA and various other countries in West, especially in the Western Europe, like the people's opinion does matter. When Britain wanted to exit from that of European Union, a Brexit was done, the referendum was done there. So it means that it is not let's say that political culture, in their understanding, it is not a kind of a top-down approach, like it is not imposed from above or like that, but it is a bottom-up approach. Bottom-up approach, it means that where the aspirations of people are in the minds of the decision makers. It means that the government is accountable and responsible towards the demands and aspirations of the people, as they know that the people have that power of electing the government, and mostly these attitudes and perspectives were visible in the democratic countries. Then after, we have S.E. Finer's book is there, The Man on the Horseback, published in 1962. He also identified different types of culture. So the mature political culture he has seen or observed in England and USA. Developed political culture he has seen in these countries, Germany during the empire period to that of Hitler, then Japan between the two world wars. They represented the developed political culture. So first is the mature political culture that was observed in USA and Britain. Then after, you have the developed political culture in Germany during the empire period to that of Adolf Hitler, and Japan between the two world wars witnessed this type of culture. Then we have the low political culture. Low political culture actually represented the Egypt, Spain, Syria, low political culture. Then after, we have the minimal political culture. Minimal political culture is more obvious in the countries like, Mexico, Congo. Let's say that in the third world countries specifically, or the newly decolonized countries. Always remember the point that he was writing in the period 1960s. This was the period of decolonization. Many African, Asian and Latin American countries, specifically African and Asian countries, got independence during this period. So low political culture in Egypt, Spain and Syria. Minimal political culture was observed in Mexico and Congo. Then we have Lucian Pie. Lucian Pie on non-Western political systems. As you know that while studying about political culture approach, we find that there was a new orientation towards studying the non-Western societies also. Why this happened? It's a very interesting fact. It will happen because of the fact, like during the colonial period, like we have the lines of Winston Churchill that sun never sets in British Empire. Many countries in the world in those days were under the British colonialism. Rest of the French, Dutch and others also did the rest of the things. Now, after decolonization, now you have so many countries on the world map. Now you have to study about what sort of systems they are having. Obviously, there was a push from the like America and many other countries in the Western Europe that these countries should adopt the democratic system and obviously capitalism in there as their economic policy. But at the same time, this period was also witnessing the Cold War. So the Soviets were also trying to expand their spheres of influence, and they were trying to bring about communist regimes in various countries, in this specifically in these decolonized countries. So here you can say that the writers, the Western writers, they were more like trying to look at the characteristic features of the non-Western society. So Lucian Pie is one among them. So he has identified certain points on the non-Western societies. Traditional societies with low degree of functional differentiation, like he has tried to describe about a kind of a prismatic type of system, or let's say that it was more primordial. Then after, we have the lack of proper communication, like communication between the people and the government. And then after, because it's like more primordial, ethnic type of identities were given more prominence. Then after, the rate of recruitment in these societies is high. Charismatic personality of the leaders, because in those days many of these decolonized countries got leaders who had came to power through the charisma, not through the very people-centric approach, but rather than that, they came to power through certain oratory skills, or we can say that they came to power through by creating certain rhetoric. Then after, grave economic disparities were observed because most of these countries were agrarian dominated, industrial sectors were very little, and most of these countries were producing the raw materials for the core countries in the Western Europe or to the big industrial countries. So their economic disparities were higher, and the unemployment, poverty, ethnic clashes, all these things characterize the non-Western societies. Like, let's say that the Latin American, Asian and African societies basically. So that's all in this lecture, students. Stay tuned for more lectures. Bye.